And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is our power rankings after 4 weeks of Major League Rugby action in the 2023 season. And wow, if we thought week 3 was kind of predictable, week 4 definitely had some really interesting developments. A huge upset that has really shook the rankings, the power rankings, going into this week. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk and analyze about this. So let's get right to it. Of course, I'll also be doing my Super Brew Rugby411 MLR Pick'em results. We had some. I had a very good week, so I'm very happy about that. So did a lot of other people. Definitely making up for the horrible week that I had last week. So, once again, if you're new to my power rankings, these power rankings aren't necessarily based off of pure win-loss records. It was brought up about how certain teams slide or are ahead of other teams. It really is about the more recent, what you've done lately, not what you've done in the past. The season is very long. You could have had a hot streak at the very beginning of the season, but by week 10, 11, 12, you're starting to slowly slide back. It doesn't matter how good you were in week 1 or 2. It really is about the here and now. Also, of course, it depends on who you beat, where you beat them. Home pitch advantage is a true thing. And, beating on a lower ranked team doesn't get you high up or keeps you as secure as if you're taking down more of the top-notch teams in the league. So, let's get down to it. And unfortunately, as much as it pained me to move this team down to the number 12 spot, everybody's second favorite team, the Dallas Jackals, back to a very familiar position that they were pretty much all of last season, down to number 12, down a couple spots. They lost to San Diego, the San Diego Legion, blanked 0-22. If you just look at the scoreline, the results seem pretty bad for Dallas. To be honest, if you watch the game, and I watch every game, I've caught up. I have watched every game up to this point. Dallas were much better this week than they were last week. Even though they didn't score any points, they really were very competitive in the game. To the point where by half they were close to, I think they're only down maybe 15-0 at that point. And at the half, right before the halftime, they were on the verge of scoring when unfortunately they had a knock on right at the try zone of San Diego. And that's pretty much as close as they got, unfortunately. But it just showed that they were in the game. It's just unfortunate by the second half, they were pretty worn down by the San Diego offense. Again, played much better this game than they did last game. So definitely an improvement, but unfortunately it is a loss. And comparatively to how the other teams in the bottom 4 did, they were the worst performance of this week, so they slid down to the very bottom. I do want to give a shout out to Dallas Jackals player Jalen Tatum, who unfortunately was hurt while tackling a San Diego player, had to be carted out of the field, of the pitch. From what we understand, interviews with him, he was okay. It was very much a precautionary measure because he did hit his head severely. He was complaining about some numbness in his body. But he is, from what I understand, okay. Hopefully he'll be back on the pitch sooner than later. But again, Dallas, a tough loss for them. Still confident that they will win at least 2 games this season. But they have been playing against a lot of tough teams. So unfortunately, San Diego, one of the best teams in the league right now. Again, losing only 22-0 in a pretty damn good performance. I'm still very confident that Dallas will at least get 2 wins this season. Now, the game that I really was kind of shocked by, because I did think they would do better. Unfortunately, the new kids on the block, the Chicago Hounds, sliding down from the number 9 spot down to number 11, losing to also winless at that point, the Toronto Arrows. In a very, again, another close heartbreaker of a game, 26-27, losing by 1 point. I'll go more into detail because, well, to be honest, we might as well go into detail now because the next team is the team that beat them. The Toronto Arrows moving up from the 12th position to the number 10 position. I'm only going to mention them here because, to be honest, it was really only one player that beat the Chicago Hounds practically by himself, scored all 27 points in the game. Sam Malcolm, the fly half for the Toronto Arrows. Not only did he score 2 tries, but he kicked off of the tee as well as he got a drop kick goal. The third player, surprisingly, in Major League Rugby history to score a try, to score a penalty kick, and a drop kick goal all in one game. I believe, according to MLR Stats, who again, it's a great follow if you haven't followed them on Instagram. MLR Stats, they put all the numbers, they've kept track of every try scored, every point scored. They put a lot of great facts. They keep track of all the point scores and who's in the lead of scoring tries. I go to their website for a lot of information. They put down that I believe Sam Malcolm was the 4th player in franchise history for Major League Rugby to score all the points for their team in a victory. So kudos to Sam Malcolm, 27 points, putting Sam Malcolm right now in second for the most points scored in the season so far. But again, let's go over the game real quick. Chicago had a chance to do some damage to Toronto, where there was one point where Toronto had a double yellow card, and Chicago just really couldn't bounce or take advantage of it. And in the end, there was still a lot of miscommunication, a lot of really silly errors on Chicago's part. Macklin Jones, or one of the Chicago players, got an unfortunate yellow card of his own, which Toronto took advantage of. There was a point at the very end, which had a very weird ending, to be honest, where Chicago had the chance to win. They were only down by 1. They had the ball going into Chicago territory. There was a weird knock-on, and a weird ball was out of bounds, even though time was already up. They restarted the game to give the ball to Toronto. Chicago was able to steal it. Chicago tried again to score. Unfortunately, knocked on the ball again. It was a very, very weird ending to, again, a very heartbreaker of a game. Chicago had the ability to win. Really, again, poor discipline on them that allowed Sam Malcolm to score a lot of penalty kicks. Sam Malcolm scored the 2 tries in the game. It was all Sam Malcolm. So kudos to Sam Malcolm. Really is the reason why Toronto went up 2 points. 27 points by himself, and putting Toronto up to 10th place. Now, the biggest shocker of the night, because I was shocked that Chicago lost such a game that I felt they should have won, but the real true shocker, so far the biggest shock of this 2023 season, is your reigning defending MLR champions, the Rugby Ironworkers from New York, losing to the winless NOLA Gold, sliding down all the way from the 2 spot down to the number 9 spot, dropping 7 spots. And you know, it was a really almost embarrassing game for New York, losing 8-34. I mean, good lord, it wasn't even a close game. Don't know. It was kind of brought up that maybe the travel from New York to New Orleans, the change in the weather as well. New York is definitely dealing with a cold winter. NOLA was, from what I understand on the day of the game, a very balmy, humid, almost summer-like day for New Orleans. And, it just kind of showed in the New York players. They just looked very lifeless. They did not look like they wanted to be there. And boy, Old Glory just started putting up the points on the game. It was a really, really disappointing game for New York. I was expecting more from them, obviously. And it's shocking that they lost to, again, a winless team like NOLA. Got to give credit to Rodney Iona, the fly half of NOLA, being able to score pretty much a good majority of the points for NOLA. Also scored 2 tries of his own, so kind of following the pattern of Sam Malcolm, but not getting 27 points of his own. but did a lot. There are a lot of injuries that both sides kind of suffered, so you kind of put that in there. Moni Tanguia from New York, suffered injury. Cara Pryor as well. Harley Wheeler from NOLA Gold, unfortunately, suffered an injury, wasn't able to play in the game. But man, otherwise, either that, New York just really, again, did not look with it. And NOLA was able to just completely dominating the game. They scored 4 tries right in the first half, right before New York ever put points on the board. So again, I don't know. It was a shocker to almost everybody in our pick'em pool. I'll explain later, but I don't believe anybody saw this one coming except for NOLA fans. And that loss again drops New York all the way down to 9th. Big win for NOLA. Big loss for New York. It'll be interesting to see if New York bounces back. One of 2 teams on a bye this week, Utah Warriors. I don't believe in moving Utah bye team up a spot or down a spot, so they got to stay in the number 8 spot. And next one, moving down a couple of spots, Old Glory DC from the 5 spot to the 7, suffering a loss, a very close loss to the New England Free Jacks. Gotta give a shout out to Josh Larson, who unfortunately, he just celebrated his 50th cap, but unfortunately dislocated his shoulder in the game. Hopefully, he will recover quickly and come back onto the pitch. This game was actually a game that New England was looking pretty good in, and yet Old Glory was able to come back and almost steal the win from New England. So it was a very, very close game. Wanted to give a shout out to former Guillotines player Ben Lesage for scoring a very beautiful try for his new team in New England. There were a few penalty issues with New England, and Old Glory was able to take advantage of that, scoring a couple of tries off of that. But in the end, because of some ill discipline on New England's part, Old Glory was able to score. At one point, Old Glory was out of the bonus points for losing. They were down by 10 points. They didn't have their 4th try. Going into the last 5 minutes of the game, New England could have put the clamp onto Old Glory, preventing them from getting the double bonus points. But in the end, because of the ill discipline of New England, with a yellow card, Old Glory was able to take advantage, scoring their last try, their 4th bonus point try, as well as then losing only by 3 points, giving them the 2 bonus point loss. So even though Old Glory did not win the game, they had a very strong performance, but had to slide them down 2 spots for the loss. And New England, little preview of what's going to happen with them, they're going to move up a couple spots. Before we get to them, though, again, the other team that was on a bye this week, Rugby ATL, stays in the number 6 position. And as I mentioned before, it's basically a switcheroo. Free Jacks were in number 7, move up to number 5 after beating Old Glory. But again, it was a good win for New England, but Old Glory was close to coming back for the steal. But New England was still able to walk away with a win. Then, going on, again, the biggest upset, NOLA Gold defeating Rugby New York, puts them up all the way from the basement to the penthouse, going to the 4th spot, right at the edge of the elite. Some people may argue, why would you not let NOLA Gold get up to the number 2 position? That's where New York was. Because again, we don't know if this was a fluke win. We don't know if it was because New York just was really not with it that game, or if this is a turnaround for NOLA. NOLA will have to start proving it from here on out if they should stay up in the top 4. Knowing New York, I don't feel they're going to stay down here in the basement very long. So, giving them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, putting them in the number 4 spot, but they still got to work their way to stay there or move them way up by beating some of the more other elite teams in the league. Speaking of elite teams, unfortunately, our former number 1 team moving down to number 3, the Houston SaberCats, coming off of a huge victory over San Diego. playing against the only other undefeated team. It was our watch-along game of the week. Really, really great game. A lot of fun. Houston unfortunately lost to Seattle 24-12. Houston was really competitive at one point. Unfortunately, again, some ill discipline, a couple yellow cards, and then their line-out play was just horrendous. But their line-out play kind of hurt because CC Mahoney, who was yellow carded in the game, was kind of their pivotal piece in their line-out. He is a tall lock. Without CC Mahoney, Houston's line-out unit really suffered. Seattle took advantage of it and was really just stealing almost all the lineouts from Houston. So in the end, that did come into play. Seattle, again, like I mentioned before, their MO in their games is just using their strong seawall defense to kind of lull the game to a slow pace and then score when they have the opportunities. Of course, also AJ Alatimu, last year's MLR Player of the Year, almost perfect off of the tee, scored 14 points, and that really did help Seattle to pull away from Houston to win 24-12. So leaving our only two teams left, the ones that have won in the week, San Diego, who defeated Dallas 22-0. They move up from the 4 spot to the 2, and then Seattle Seawolves claiming the number 1 spot after defeating Houston, moving up from 3-1, and remains as the only undefeated team left in MLR. But again, just because they're undefeated is not the whole reason why they're the number 1 spot, but it kind of makes sense that they would end up there. But they have beaten a lot of the premier teams here in Major League Rugby. They've beaten San Diego, they've beaten Houston, they've beaten New York. So Seattle right now is looking like the top team. But again, as we just saw with New Orleans taking down New York, anything can happen, anything can change. We still have some winless teams, Chicago and Dallas. They're actually going to be playing against each other this coming week. So one of them is going to finally get their first win. Thinking it might be Chicago, but we'll talk about that when we do our previews. But that is our lineup, our power rankings after week 4. As always, I would love to hear your comments on what your thoughts are. If I was not generous enough with NOLA, if I was too hard on New York for losing. But yes, definitely a huge shakeup seeing your reigning defending MLR champions in the bottom 4th. But again, what I like about this, and it kind of supports what I was saying before, the Western Conference is, I feel, the stronger conference. We already have 3 out of the 4 teams from the West. But what is interesting is that the only winless teams are also from the West, with Toronto and NOLA getting their first wins, big wins in the case of NOLA. The Eastern Conference is looking a little bit more competitive than what I thought. But again, when they start to do interconference play, I still feel Western Conference teams are going to run the gamut over Eastern Conference. But I may be wrong. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. So now let's turn to our Super Brew Pick'em pool results for week 4. Again, did much better this week than I did last week. Last week I had the horrible wooden spoon. But let's put up the results right here. Bam! And congratulations to John Hawkins, who is our winner of this week, finishing the week with 6.33. He only missed 1 game out of all the choices, and of course it was the Rugby New York NOLA game. I don't believe anybody in our pool picked that game. No surprise there. But John Hawkins, 6.33. SD Cow Guy came in second with 5 points. I believe he only missed 1 game as well, the NOLA New York game, but because of the bonus points, John Hawkins came out just slightly ahead. Then tied for 3rd, Brit42, Jahigo, and myself. So big bounce back from last week. And then at the very bottom, unfortunately, Tex at the bottom of the heap. Though, it should be noted, Footy Balls, once again, did not turn in results. Footy Balls, at least try, brother. You know, I'm going to have to talk to Rugby Union and League Fan about maybe stoking the fires with you, getting you back into playing, because it's not acceptable to not at least try. Now, let's go over the overall results after 4 weeks. Bam! And right now, MSDRFC 83, Mike, is still in first place with 30 points. Right behind them is USA League and Union Rugby Fan with 8.33 points. Right behind him is Jahigo. Again, I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly at 28.16. Because of his big win this week, going up a spot, John Hawkins, 27.83. And even though SD Cal guy came in second, he actually drops a spot, but he's very close behind, 27 points solid. He's only 0.83 points behind from John Hawkins. All the top five are within 3 points of each other. So right now, very competitive for that top spot. And unfortunately, Footy Balls, you drop down to 2 spots to be at the very bottom because you're not playing. Let's make sure you are. So, as always, thank you everybody who's been playing in our Super Brew, MLR, Rugby411 Pick'em Pool. Technically, you could still join, though now it is kind of getting late in the season. I don't know if you'll have a good run or a great chance of winning a free t-shirt of your MLR team of your choice, courtesy of myself. But again, come on in. The water is fine in our pool. See if you can get into the top 5. Right now, John Hawkins, SD Cal guy, and Britt. MSDRFC 83, USA League, and Union Rugby Fan are looking like they're fighting neck to neck, and Jahigo as well. So let's see who ends up winning the t-shirt at the end. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching my video. I do appreciate it. Leave the comments below, and I'll see you on the pitch.